Hello there, everyone. So, today, what we are looking at here is going to be to discuss a variety of kind of cultural movements that were happening in the late 19th century, kind of moving into the early 20th century. And we're going to kind of call this stuff the culture of modernity, I guess, as things are starting to change. And we got the influence of, you got all the industrialization and stuff. And so we're going to look at a few different things here. So, first, we're going to start off with literature. And the big kind of movement in literature was this concept of naturalism, right? And then in this case, these guys are going to do is they're going to accept the material world, like the world as we see it is real. Okay, and the idea is to try to focus on depicting that in as close a way as we possibly can. Now, the difference between this aspect and, say, realism is that it's not all about trying to be positive or optimistic. Actually, a lot of times the themes and ideas here are about kind of a little darker, but in general, there was a lot of pessimism in some of this literature. And often you had characters that were trapped in situations beyond their control due to the way that society is structured and whatnot. So that's kind of the concept behind this. And the guy that is really the main guy for that is Émile Zola. Émile Zola wrote about a lot of things, particularly about the slums and coal fields and how that impacts people, how they live. He was really influenced by Darwin and the concept of the struggle for survival, and he sees that in like working class people. Rogom Makar, maybe? I don't know. Go to Google Translate. This was a 20-volume series that he wrote of novels that focus on the natural and social history of a family, gets into the ups and downs, the darker side of what people have to deal with. And it really gives us Zola gives us such a sense of what like regular people were going through at this time. And it was really impactful. However, in Russia, this idea of naturalism and the ideas of their writers are going to be huge. And this era is typically referred to as the golden age of Russian literature. And that's mainly because of the two kind of big forerunners here. And of course, we have the titan Leo Tolstoy, who of course is famous for his book War and Peace, which there are other things involved here, or other works that he did. But, he's able to put like the struggles of life, like what people deal with, all being played out during Napoleon's invasion of Russia. And he's very detailed and realistic when depicting the war and the military. His characters are known for being super well developed to the point where you can see how they're almost like psychological, analysis going on of these characters because there's like just that much depth going on to what he's writing. But we also see a lot of things about his writing that is fatalistic that a lot of people like, in that love and trust don't always necessarily win every time, and in many cases they don't. And so there is that deeper level of realism here that Tolstoy brings in his writing. And along with him, we have Fyodor Dostoevsky, who is a really interesting guy because he's a guy that's going to start to push some things. He's known for a variety of works. Really interesting life. He had a variety of jobs and experiences. At one point, he was linked to a revolutionary group, so during Alexander III. So, he's arrested. He's actually sentenced to death. He's on his way to being shot when, for whatever reason, at the last second, he was given a reprieve and sent to a Siberian work camp for 4 years. He then became a soldier. He was actually an engineer in the Russian army. And all that time thinking about writing, doing some writing. And then finally, he's published in the year 1866, when I believe he was about 45 or 46 years old. So, lived an interesting life before he gets published. So here's him as a soldier, and here's him just as he's getting published. His books are pretty huge. Crime and Punishment, The Brothers Karamazov, and others. I mean, Crime and Punishment is one of a key work that is covered in a lot of different just high school curriculums in the United States today, let alone worldwide. And really what you see in his works is that he uses psychological and moral observation to just give us a deeper insight into human nature and what humans are all about. Okay, and we see this through his characters. He focuses really on an idea of that we've gotten too materialistic and we've lost our spirituality. And I have your issues of focus. He's looking at the focus of what the larger world is focusing on. Achievement and human will and reason. He's trying to get a little away from like the tech and science stuff. And he feels that we need to purify our souls a bit more, that we've all been corrupted, and we do that through our suffering and faith. So you got to struggle a little bit, but you have to have big faith. And some of his works could be considered to be criticism of that particular time period, as well as Russia itself. And so incredibly influential. And we're starting to see these authors again coming back out and really seeing literature taken into like an interesting and just so in-depth place. All right. And another movement at this time, literature-wise, is symbolism. This is mainly a poetry thing, and these guys are very anti-realistic. Okay, so the main concepts we have here is that humans can never really have an objective view of the world. They're always going to be very subjective, and that the material world actually isn't even real, okay, but it's more or less a collection of symbols that reflect true reality of human mind. So like we're getting like metaphysical and crazy deep here. I mean, the guys at the top of this were William Butler Yeats and Rainer Maria Rilke. I mean, these guys really were pushing it to the next level. Now, the impact interesting here is like these guys were much more appreciated, I think, later on. It kind of drops down from Romanticism. A lot of people didn't necessarily like it. They didn't necessarily get it, especially at that time, because a lot of it is for like, your interpretation or trying to understand what the author is trying to symbolize. And some people love this stuff. They get really, really in depth into it, and other people just struggle with it. So like, it depends on what angle that you're going at here. Like, for instance, here's an excerpt of Sailing to Byzantium, which is one of Yeats's main works. An aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hand and sing, and louder sing for every tatter in its mortar dress. Nor is there singing school but studying, monuments of its own magnificence, and therefore I have sailed the seas and come to the holy city of Byzantium. So take that with how you will. Feel free to go check out the whole poem. But there we go. So then we got some art stuff going on here. And one of the first big movement of this time in the 1800s and really in the 1870s is Impressionism. Okay, and this starts in France. And initially the goal was to go out and paint nature and be within nature when you paint it. So not kind of looking from afar, but just getting out, getting away from the industrialized centers, getting into nature. Eventually, though, it will be big on depicting kind of the upper middle class and just like what people like to do for fun, and some of kind of the new pastimes are being developed. The structure of it is interesting. There's bright colors, these really kind of dynamic brush strokes, and sometimes it's even on a smaller, more private scale. Here's just a quote that I came across that really helps to describe it, and their view of previous art. Precise drawing is dry and hampers the impression of the whole. It destroys all sensation. Do not define too closely the outlines of things. It is the brushstroke of the right value and color which should produce the drawing. Work at the same time upon the sky, water, branches, ground, keeping everything going on an equal basis, and unceasing rework until you've got it. Don't proceed according to rules and principles, but paint what you observe and feel. Paint generously and unhesitatingly, for it's best not to lose the first impression. And so hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of what this is really all about. One of the key titans here is Claude Monet. As you see here, Women with Parasol and the Water Lilies and the Japanese Bridge are two of his personal favorites, or not his personal favorites, two of the ones that are known. He's big on painting water and interplaying kind of light and water and the atmosphere as well. And again, you see those deliberate brushstrokes. If you really, really look at it, you can see the paint is fairly thick here, which is kind of one of the big ideas. And so that's why Monet is really a titan. And then you have Berthe Morisot, who is really, really huge. I mean, she's really the first woman to become a professional artist. I mean, she is a painter. She is paid to paint, and she definitely depicts a lot of the female experience, which in general in art, for much of the history of European art, we miss that. We don't really get that. And so Le Coif and Child Among the Hollyhocks, I mean, we can see these are regular things and experiences and what women were wearing. I mean, it's really cool that we finally get that. Now, to go along with the Impressionists, we have the Post-Impressionists. And so what's changing here? So we're still going to do light and color. We're still going to have some of those brush strokes. We're still going to get a little bit more form here. The whole idea is that, like, you're not trying to produce a work that looks like an imitation of anything. Rather, you want to develop a personal statement about reality and how you feel. And a lot of this is more inward. Like when you're painting things, you're kind of feeling your emotions. So there's a little bit of I think, post-impressionism, and I'm not an art person per se. Like, I love going and looking at art. I'm not a big, analyzer, if you will, at art. But I think when you look at it and some of the ideas behind it, you're taking some of the core concepts of romanticism and then blending them with kind of the technical look of impressionism, and thus we get post-impressionism. You see here Paul Cézanne is probably the titan. This Mont Saint-Victor and the card players. Again, you see a little bit more structure over here. Here's kind of like an almost impression-y type of thing, but then over here we see a little bit more structures with the table and the playing cards and stuff like that. So Cézanne really wants to look at kind of like the underlying geometric structures of things, and that's why you can kind of see that there. He often pushed the brush really hard on the canvas, so you would get these kind of like pops of color, especially in the Mont Saint-Victor. You can see that. And for him, that allowed him to see the reality a little bit more. Really, one of the most known guys at this time, of course, is Vincent Van Gogh. The Starry Night, you've all seen it. Café du Tambourine is another really, really good one. I mean, he was a troubled and tragic genius. Most of us know his struggles with sanity for a lot of his life, and ultimately the taking of his own life. Only ever sold one work to just his brother, but he really looked at art as a spiritual experience, and that you should just paint what you feel. And if you paint what you feel, that will come back to the observer of your art. And really, really brilliant. Again, I said very tragic when you look at how his life went on, spending time in the sanitarium and then eventually, as I said, ending his own life. But his works were huge, and shortly after his death, like, people really started to look at what he did and how transformative his works really were. Now, we will also get the birth of some photography at this point. George Eastman, an American, invents the Kodak camera in 1888. And this is a small, compact camera that you can carry around with you. You don't have to have the big light thing. You don't have to have the powder. You don't have to have people sit there for a little while after the picture is taken. You can walk around and take it and look at the cameras on your phone and all that type of photography. Initially it takes a little while to get to the artistic impact of this, but I mentioned now because we're going to talk about it a lot later. This is going to become a big deal, and it was really because of the invention of like the personalized camera. I mean, you've got them on your phones, we've got them everywhere, and we can thank George Eastman for that. Also, we have some new things developing. So Pablo Picasso develops Cubism, the whole idea of using geometric designs to recreate reality. And you see some of his better known works, The Girl with the Mandolin and Three Musicians. And so you're using these different types of, shapes to create kind of an alternative reality. And Picasso's going to continue to push and get really creative. But early in his career in the late 1800s, this is really where his influence is going to be. And it's huge. And then we also get the beginning of early abstract art. And the idea of leaving reality behind is that you are trying to, in your works, you avoid any reference to visual reality. You just concentrate on color and the shapes that come to you. You're not really looking to directly represent anything in particular. Probably the most known work from this period is The Square with White Border, which I don't even know how that title happens, but whatever. And that is that work there on the left by Wassily Kandinsky. But we're going to talk a lot about more abstract art, and you're seeing that artists are really just trying to push it. They're really just trying to get creative and doing things and using their emotion, but also at the same sense, like getting away from some of the rules and structure that art was supposed to have. And finally, we have music. So we have a couple musicians I'll talk about. And one of the big kind of advance at this point is like the idea of using music to help with national identity. Edvard Grieg was the guy that really pushes that to the front and trying to develop like bringing together folk music and the sounds to really develop like this is the music of Norway. So he's Norwegian, and this is what we want you to think when you hear Norwegian music, and the concept of national musical styles are starting to develop. So let's get a little bit of a listen here. I think you'll let me jump back here. This one, I believe. Alright, so that gives you a little bit of a sense of that, and my virus definitions updates there, but I don't know how to get rid of it, so there we go, went away, cool. The other big titan at this time is Claude Debussy, I think it's Debussy. Here he is down here, totally having fun. He really took a lot of inspiration from artwork. Like, he looked at the Impressionist movement, and he used that and poetry just to inspire his writing of music. He wants to often try to depict ideas that he read in poetry or what he saw in art, and to recreate like the sound that he found, that the sound that he would feel would be present in that poetry or be present in that work of art. And bringing these things to life was his really goal, and he wants to evoke an emotional reaction from people, and that's really like his overall goal. And here's one of his main works, Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun. Okay, just kidding. Let's go back. Let's try that again. I lost my mouse. Whoa, all over the place. All right, I guess I'm going to skip that and just see. And then we have the last guy is Igor Stravinsky. Igor Stravinsky is, I mean, he's a titan. He's an absolute titan, and he's going to remove some of the structure of his music, and his idea is to, just really have the music express feelings and get emotion. And he really starts to get some notoriety when he writes a number of ballets and the music that accompanies the ballet, and it just gets these people up and going. And I mean, it's famous, was one time he had his work, The Rite of Spring, was being played in Paris, and it inspired people who heard it in a Paris show to actually riot at the theater. I mean, it was like super intense, and so he's bringing some changes, and again, music becomes about being emotional. And I really want to play some of this, and I don't know why my mouse disappeared. Okay, let's see if that works. I popped right back out. There we go. Let's hear some Stravinsky. Kind of foreboding. You see these just pops of sound that come in. So, of course, it goes on. I would encourage you to listen to all of it. But you see that music, and sorry for the technical glitch and the jumping in and out of the presentation here. But, I wanted to make sure that you heard a little bit of that. So, again, we're seeing, again, so many changes in art and literature and stuff, and just keep going. And this is a major theme in European history. It's not going away anytime soon. And hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll talk to you soon.